How about my dearest YouTube friends? Today we are in a new video. We are going to explain the paths of the November 2025 sub-monthly mission. In this case, we are going to explain the paths with which are the best characters to make, and then we are going to move on to the bosses. I also have to tell you that you are already seeing it above. I am on Black Friday from November 1 to 30. I have up to 50% off some missions. You have the catalog in the description. So let's get started, friends. Well, we're starting against Castellan. So folks, this path leads to mutants, okay? And in this case, we have to bring characters who are immune to bleeding, because every time they bleed us, we are going to be generating fury, as you are seeing under the Life of Sand, okay? Otherwise, nothing happens. You can also take any character that is not immune to bleeding, because this way, by throwing a super attack, you can be eliminating the disadvantages of bleeding. You guys watching the fight yet? With Gingri, that in this case we are not immune to bleeding, but in this case it does not act on us as much, it does not harm us as much, simply as the note tells us of this mission, because we must be throwing a super attack to see if it leaves us a super attack to turn them into furies, as you just saw. Well, that's it. Very good. This is how we have to develop this whole path. Well, friends, let's start with the first boss. In this case, we have Dr. Octopus, and how it will surely not be the 6 disasters we face. In this monthly supervision, we start with the Autotopus that has these improvements, the robust improvement. The defender has 40%, the potential for this defender to receive 60% less damage if we do not have improvements applied. So it is very important to have a character that generates the improvements, the attacker's impacts. And the defender has a 20% chance to apply an incineration handicap, dealing 10% energy damage over 3 seconds. Then if the defender receives an impact from a strong attack and a timer starts for 4 seconds and attack yourself begins to charge a strong attack in longer time, well, we suffer from flakiness, therefore double hard hit against this Dr. Octopus must be avoided when the attacker obtains a power bar. If he starts a 15-second timer and the timer expires, the defender gains a passive 5-second handicap immunity effect. Knock down the defender, eliminate the timer. So B, we are forced to throw a hard blow, and then finally the defender has a 40% chance of automatically blocking. They are not basic attacks unless an interaction or plasma handicap is overridden. This automatic lock has a well-programmed lock, therefore it may be a stop, so you can see us put a daze. In this case, we take Snake, but don't worry, later I am going to give you a list of the best characters to be able to give this Doctorotops, because, for example, among them Starbucks, and what we simply have to do is avoid that automatic blocking, okay? In the end, that's what's going to be bothering us in this fight. So what is there to be doing? Well, simply if you use this Snake, it is to reach Super Take 1 to be able to achieve that accurate concentration here. For example, Cyclops, which can serve us quite well, very important, that immunity to disadvantages that may be bothering us a little. In theory, accurate concentration should be working for us, because in the end or not, that's the failure and the illusion. Well, I haven't done anything. I've brought a character that doesn't, it's not necessary, sorry, they don't work. But hey, nothing happens. You're already seeing how he's also falling. Very simple, because in the end, Dr. Octopus is not a difficult character to avoid. You simply have to force him to have Super Attack 1, which is the easiest to be. Avoiding Veil surpasses that too, is a little more complicated, and you are already seeing how we have to avoid that automatic blocking. But you are already seeing that in the end with characters who throw unblockable super attacks, as in this case it has been Snake. Well, it is achieved quite simple, apart from the note that we have a 40% probability of inclination. With that, we also avoid the automatic blocking. That is, the game itself lets us throw that blocking, those inclination disadvantages to avoid those automatic blocking. You are already seeing it, like having a 4% probability of throwing those blows with inclinations. Well, we are going to prevent that automatic blocking, the only thing that happens from time to time, because those immunity to the disadvantages is put in. You are already seeing that even with Snake, which is not a counter against this Dr. Octopus, it has been quite simple, so we are not going to talk to the next boss. But first we see the counters, then friends, the path of this one is simply to carry cosmic characters that we have the small probability of that surveillance that you are seeing under the Snake life will be activated for us. When we arrive at 10 o'clock combo, they will put us at the failure disadvantage. When we lock down, when we have that failure disadvantage, with that improvement in surveillance, they will be passing us those improvements. Fury has a maximum of 10 to do the most damage possible. You are already seeing that with Snake, it is the best for this path thanks to accurate concentration, because we are going to avoid failure, and apart from that, we have the small probability of that surveillance. Therefore, you are already seeing which Snake is the best counter for this path. Okay guys, next boss. Are we talking about Venom? Well, no, not just 6 accidents. So let's see the nodes coming. Every time the defender is knocked down, the attacker obtains a Fury improvement that increases the attack force by 5% for 10 seconds. You cannot impede the modification of skill accuracy. Every 20 seconds, the defender has a power accumulation, generates 25% maximum power 2010 seconds. Whenever attacker receives the same type of basic attack twice in a row, the defender has intensification that makes their upgrades last longer. When the attacker makes a well-timed block, he has a detonator charge for every 5 attacker combo mediator hits. He eliminates a detonator charge. When the attacker reaches 3 detonator charge, all that consumes in the attacker suffers passive Spirit Bramble. It involves 4% of the defender's attack as energy damage. Therefore, you must avoid making many stops in a row. The defender is immune to the effect. Cancel the distortion seal target. Better immunity, and neutralize and cannot modify the skill accuracy improvement. In this case, well, I was going to give it to Kindred Veil because in the end, this will make the disadvantages last less. It does not remove them, but it will make them last less. Therefore, it can serve us quite well. In this case, you are already seeing that under Kindred's life, when we make a stop, we get that orange disadvantage that is simply like 5 blows below. Sorry for our attacker, because with that, we will be able to get rid of that disadvantage. So, what I simply recommend here is that with Venom, you always go to Super Attack 2, which is the most Super Attack 1, which is the easiest to evade, and just with a character that does pretty good damage. You are also seeing that with super attacks, with strong blows, well, we are generating our Fury improvements, and that can help us do even more damage. But it is also a double-edged sword, because if, well, we do 3 words in a row, they are going to put that spiritual bush on us, and it is going to do quite terrible damage to us. So, as I always tell you, with Venom, always force you to throw Super Attack 1, which is the easiest to avoid, and with, in this case, Kindle, you are already seeing the damage we do. Due to disadvantages, that's why our friend Kindle serves very, very well, and that's why I took it. But don't worry, because after the fight, you will be teaching yourself which are the best counters, okay? Or will I be putting them here? Low. The truth is that I don't know how he's going to do it at the moment, but you are seeing that with Venom, you simply have to be that he has Super Attack 1, which is the easiest to avoid, and also be very careful with that accumulation of power that he has every 25 seconds or something like that. Okay, there you can't go to Super Attack 2, so always force the tiger to use the super attack well, as you are already seeing, and in the end kinda works very well for us because it makes the advantages such as intensification and power accumulation last much less. In the end, we are half taking them away by making them last much less. For example, Nico Minuro here works very well. Even Satra could be working spectacularly, but simply our Kindle, because for me it is the best, very good. Let's go for the best counters. All this path consists of bringing skillful characters that let them disorient, incineration, or high voltage to avoid the illusion of the character, because let's remember that every time we repeat, the same basic attack will be evading. Therefore, if it has a high voltage disadvantage as a lethal origin, then we will be generating an improvement in Fury, since the character will not be able to evade. So the best way to carry in this mission is a character who puts high voltage. You see how in this case, since he didn't have high voltage, have you seen how he evaded? Well, I'll have to bring a character who puts in high voltage, skillful incineration, or even disorientates. Is that why you're seeing what you're seeing, Temple? And with our friend Black Widow, lethal origin, that you are already seeing the strength it has. So yeah, we move on to the head of this mission, well folks, and we get into the third boss, which in this case is Electro. Be careful with this character, who is quite complicated, because we are going to see the nodes we have. The defender takes 50% less damage from all sources except super attacks, strong attacks, and attacks without blocks. So here it is key to have a character that generates efficiencies and does great damage through super attacks. The effects of the issue node and battlegrounds cannot be modified. Every 10 seconds, the defender has a block dim improvement of 12 seconds, so be very careful, and every 11 seconds they give it to their routing. If we're far away, it turns on Electro, and then we have the assault battery. At the beginning of the fight, the defender takes no damage from any source, and in that place, it is stored in the battery. Whenever the defender is knocked down by his attack, the battery is drained, and the defender instantly receives 200% of the stored damage. The battery drains, the attacker receives 100% damage if they knock us down. So be very careful when the attacker fails a basic attack, generates 25% of a fixed power bar, and does not walk the power rate. This is the only way to gain power in this fight. When the attacker misses a basic attack, folks, this is key, and we have to be literally hitting the air. Therefore, you have to bring characters that generate a lot of damage with super attacks. That is why I bring the very powerful Jean Grey. So in this case, you are already seeing that we simply do not generate any power. If before we do punch in the air, okay, this is the key to being able to understand how this new gameplay works. Okay, you have already seen how we have been throwing it and how the routing is going to end, and we have to stay away, okay, so that we can be doing damage. Like I always say, you have to be hurting him. Excuse me, we have to force the Electra that has super attack 1, because let's remember that it is the easiest to avoid, that it is simply a small Rafa bite. Okay, then you have to throw the blows into the air. Okay, I recommend you when it is rooted, then throw blows into the air and take the opportunity to load the whole issue of El Poder. It's okay that in this case, if you take Din Grey, the Superta that 2 is the one that does the most damage, because you are going to see the brutal damage that we cost 216,000 damage. Also remember that it becomes unlockable from time to time, that it may be bothering us a little. Be careful that the routing ends, because we stay away and take advantage of that routing to give ourselves a few taps. Forward and backward to load the minimum or the bars of power. In the end, the cogging game allows us to reach the 2 bars of being able to throw a super attack 2 and watch it disappear. Electro of the map, a very simple note, but as long as you are clear about how to play, well, for the best counters. Okay, friends. Well, in this fourth path, in this case, we have to bring technological characters that have high voltage disadvantages. Why? Because every time we generate high voltage disadvantages, we will be generating fury improvements under our character, therefore increasing our attack force simply with every time we also do burn powers, because we will be able to generate that fury improvement. You have already seen how fast it is with this Iron Man. I think that for me, it is the best for this one. Amino. Okay, friends, we reached the fourth boss. We have the green elf, which in this case is quite simple a priori. Let's see what has them for us every 12 seconds. The defender has a regeneration improvement of setting 10% of his maximum life. If the attacker is far away, we have him. The Will Raff Mastery is eliminated. The regeneration rate of both characters is 200%. And with the active attacker, the super attack has 40% passive cowardice. Defender's stability is increased by 100% and the attack suffers an indefinite 5% demolition disadvantage when blocking the defender's attack. When the attacker activates a super attack, he eliminates one of these disadvantages for each power bar. And after I have missed one, the regeneration rate of good characters is 200%, which is key to this fight. In this case, there is no defined counter. You simply have to carry cosmic characters. Class advantage, because in the end, the only thing we have to do is when that timer finishes regeneration, then stay close to Goblin. Green, so that in this case the regeneration is put on him and so on, we do damage per second. As you will see on the screen, you have already seen how regeneration is acting, and instead of regeneration it is giving life because of that curse that our green place and the node is worth. In this case, if we stay away on our part and give us that regeneration improvement, well, we are going to receive the damage as you are already seeing on the screen that I wanted to show you. It's not a massive damage that won't kill you either, but be very careful where you go. Since I haven't said anything about the character, always force him to have more than 2, which is easier to avoid, although in this case, well, I've messed it up again, but nothing happens. It's simply easier to avoid. We have regeneration set in him, and you have seen how it does act on him and does him a little more damage. So where green is very simple or calm, I will now put the counters for you. For friends, in this 5th mission, you have to do it with characters from the scientific class. You are already seeing the equipment I carry, and in this case, what the note tells us is that we have to be letting regression disadvantages petrify, because you are already seeing under the Path of Joy that has a collection timer, power in this case, as we have those disadvantages of petrify, vulnerability, repression, and so on. We are going to be generating fury improvements in our character, increasing our attack force with a maximum of 10 fury charges. And you go and you are seeing how easy it is done with these types of character, with Photon, with a few more such as Hurka Deadless, Spider-Woman. In the end, they are characters that with petrification, they always have scientific characters. Well, you're going to do very well on this mission. Let's get the head of this mission. Okay, folks, we come to this November's new character, Spider-Man Pavir, Indian Spider-Man. Let's see the notes it has every 20 seconds. The character with the least amount of power suffers Sealed Fate. The defender gains 10% of damage for each bust the attacker has. Also, be careful because it has passive Enrage for 5 seconds. In addition, the attacker suffers Rooting in Passion form against the defender's 2 super attacks, so he must be forced to have Super Attack 1 as long as the attacker is immune to an improvement over 100% shock. Massive not accumulated for 30 seconds. This cannot be activated while accumulation is active. And lastly, the attacker starts with 5 weak charges, 4 medium charges, and 2 strong charges. If they go, we have to eliminate them, and with overattack, we restart them. In this case, as we are always going to use our Human Torch, in the end, Spider-Man is not immune in Generation Spider-Man to come. Therefore, what is going to be quite good for us is this character, because we are going to do him a lot of damage due to disadvantage. I'm already seeing under the Human Torch life that in this case, we have a series of symbols. Greens, yellows, and oranges. We have to be throwing subtitles to restart those advantages again, because if not, it is going to be making us take away our power. That is making them not gain power so easily. Also, be very careful with Spider-Man's elusive attacks to come okay, and be very careful with the Spider-Man's super attack too, because he may be rooting us, as you have already seen. Have you seen just now that our cards have been consumed? Well, we have to perform them with our character's super attack. And you're also seeing how Spider-Man has. They look more like an attacker than a defender. So here are the ones we pass it on to the counters. Okay, friends, in this last mission, you have to carry mystical characters to be able to get all those Fury upgrades. How are we going to get those Fury upgrades? So it simply drains powers, burns powers in the opponent. You are already seeing how with Dr. Rombo Super Attack 1, since we generate that Fury improvement, remember that it has a limit of 10 Fury improvements, and with that, the damage of our character will be boosted. Therefore, you have to bring mystical characters that generate. Well, those forgiveness improvements, those disadvantages of power, power burning, and so on, to be able to generate, well, all those advantages of Fury, as you are already seeing on screen with Dr. Doom. So, well, let's move on to the boss, who is the Lizard. Okay, friends, we have now reached the last character, the Lizard. In this case, it can be complicated by a node that has... Let's read them. When the attacker performs Intercept or has a guaranteed critical passive for 7 seconds, the defender begins the fight with 7 indefinite test passive effects. Each one increases the damage force that he has by 20%. Interrun asks for the strong attack. The defender after has a passive effect from critical to cruelty to use Veil. The effects of the emission nodes and battlefield cannot be modified. Skills. When the defender charges a strong blow, it pauses. Attacker's 7-second time damage is worth every 25 seconds. The attacker is passively cooled for 4 seconds until a super attack is performed when the timer is very careful with routing. When the attacker O connects the same basic attack twice in a row, he suffers a generation disadvantage that inflicts 60% of the base attack on defender as a direct tier. This is what can be quite complicated. In this case, we are going to take O Cole because let's remember that the Lizard is not immune to either hemorrhage or high volta people. That is what we have to do. It is a medium blow, weak, half good. In this case, medium, weak, half good to avoid in this way. Because that degeneration, you are already seeing how his life is getting worse, okay? In this case, Super Attack 1 is quite simple to avoid, and we simply have to take into account because of that routing disadvantage that we are under life. Hey, we have to throw a Super Attack 1 before that timer ends so that it doesn't entangle us, as you have already seen on the screen. And again, then go back to Super Attack. That is a medium weak blow. Half worth, as you are already seeing, and you are already seeing that if we interrupt the strong blow of our Lizard, it puts us in a liability of... If you do Super Attack 1, you are already seeing that it is very, very easy to avoid half weak in half good. And with that, be careful because it is going to get us in irrigation. So be very careful. You have to roll a Super Attack 1 just until it ends, as you just saw again. In this case, we have not done any type of degeneration, but here it has little life left. Well, I am going to repeat so that you can see how that degeneration is activated for us. But in this case, we have had the fight quite simple, simply taking into account routing and that passive degeneration. So friends, Well, with this, I am going to put you against it below. So if you like the video, I suggest stay and see you in other videos. Bye-bye. And before finishing the video, thank you very much to all of you who are members of the channel, to JP, to Elian Ramirez, and Oscar Salmeron for being VIP TheShori this November 2025. To become a member, you have it in the video description. Thank you all very much.